I learned about this guy, Dan Wootton, from following Johnny and Amber. Now, the reason I know Dan is because he wrote some pretty bad things about Johnny in The Sun, false allegations in fact, and I must note that Dan's got allegations against him now. But that's not all. It looks like, according to some news sources that are pretty big, The Guardian and Sky News, and probably quite a few others, Dan Wootton's contract as Mailonline columnist terminated, and The Guardian puts it as Dan has been sacked. I kind of like that. They're both pretty new, from September 28th, 2023. Now, here's the thing. Dan was not let go over the allegations, as far as I know. He said a few things about someone on GB News, about this political presenter who's a woman, and that's what did it. But it could be that what Dan did, plus the allegations, was the last straw. I got a note, I don't think it was Dan who actually said the comments, but his attitude was very agreeable towards them for the most part. Now here's the thing. In the Johnny community, some people are just very happy about it. And my attitude is this. Whatever happens to Dan, I can't feel bad. Whatever happens to Dan, he basically deserves. In the case of these comments, I don't agree it was so bad though. But to be honest, that's beside the point. Because Dan put out false allegations against Johnny that weren't true, and look what happened to Johnny. So it wouldn't really matter if I agree, if it's true, if it's false, if he deserves it, if he doesn't. Because of that, the fact is, he does deserve it. But let's see what we got. Take a look at some details. Dan Wootton's contract as a columnist for Mailonline has been terminated, a spokesperson for the news website's parent company has said. Wootton was suspended by GB News on Wednesday after a row over comments made by actor-turned-political activist Lawrence Fox on his show on Tuesday. I don't know so much about Fox. Is he really an activist? Could be. Is he just speaking his political opinion, which happens not to line up with a lot of the other political opinion that has to be said these days, or, the message or the current thing? Whatever it is, he's the one that made the comments. But like I said, Dan was pretty agreeable, giggling and things. But Dan did offer a huge apology, which Fox, I don't think, liked so much, and then exposed a few other texts that Dan was also agreeing with about this incident. They give a few details about Fox, that his comments were unacceptable, unjustifiable, and indefensible. I think that's, quite frankly, no. I don't think they were so bad. One of his comments included, "Who would want to shag that talking about this woman?" Now, alright, people know it's not literal. She's not very ugly. She's not unattractive physically. So it's not even something that people would think is true, that would trick people. That's misinformation about her. It's just a comment, basically. And furthermore, if she said that about him, well, I'm thinking nothing would happen. It probably wouldn't even be mentioned. Following events this week, DMG Media can confirm that Dan Wootton's freelance column with Mailonline, which had already been paused, has now been terminated. I love that word. I think of Arnold and his, machine guns and things shooting down Dan's contract. They note he had already been suspended by GB News after the episode, with the channel saying it was investigating the incident. Investigating? A couple of remarks? What's to investigate? And why? This is where I've got a gray area here. I'm just not so happy about how this happened here, but I gotta reiterate as many times as it takes, Dan deserves it, because Dan put out false allegations. So it really wouldn't matter about the truth or why it's happening or whatever. And here's some people on Twitter. Robbie says he shouldn't have been able to write or broadcast for money after he took a leading role in driving Caroline Flack to her, final resting place. And people say that too. That's another thing I forget about. Sick of It says the witch hunt continues. I guess maybe on Dan's side. We don't have definitive proof from a court of law about Dan's allegations, but they're very detailed, and if I had to guess with my opinion, they could be true. This person took a poll. Would it be the right thing for Dan Wootton's GB News contract to also be terminated? And most people said yes. with quite a few votes here. 365. That's one vote for every day in the year. Alright, that was silly. Let's move on. Dan Wootton laying a bunch of flowers at the gravestone of his career. Alright, this picture got around of Dan, I don't know, going to some funeral or something. Looks pretty old. Can't recall what it's about, but not such a bad joke. I heard Martin Branning will take over the column. Right, Martin Branning is obviously, allegedly, one of the names Dan used to trick people into doing sexual acts on videotape without their consent. Well, the acts, I guess, were consentful, but the video part wasn't. Anyway, that's the news. Nice bold writing here. Dan Wootton's contract as a columnist for Mailonline has been terminated. As you can see, I've got some mixed feelings on the recent thing with Lawrence Fox, but overall, can't feel bad. I got no popcorn now, but here's some imaginary popcorn I'm eating and seeing what happens next. If you're not subscribed here, consider it. If you don't, I'll be sad, but I'll get over it. See you next time.